Eric Malden was found by a trucker at approximately 6:45 a.m. on October 14, 2019. He appeared disoriented, dehydrated, and had visible lacerations on his knees, arms, and hands. Toxicology was clean. He reported missing time and described events at a remote cabin with his friend Mark Hensley near the outskirts of Avery, Pennsylvania. A search party recovered a camera, supplies, and partially burned items from the scene. No trace of Mark Hensley was found, despite thermal scans and ground-penetrating radar. Of note, a wildlife trail camera retrieved from the scene contained 3 stills. 2 were clear. The final image was corrupted, but showed a tall, human-like figure partially emerging from the cellar door. Forensic analysis could not determine whether the distortion was due to motion or camera malfunction. The figure's proportions were described as not consistent with any known person or animal. The cabin has since been posted for sale. Multiple buyers have withdrawn without explanation. Locals report odd lights in the tree line and hearing voices late at night. The cellar has been sealed. After a few days of rest, this is the story Eric gave the authorities. I wasn't really close with Mark anymore, not since high school. We used to hang out a lot back then, mostly messing around with cars or riding 4-wheelers around the back trails. After graduation, he got into construction and left town for a few years. I stayed here and started working deliveries for an auto parts place. We'd still say hey if we passed each other at the gas station, but that was about it. So when he texted me out of the blue asking if I could help him clean out his uncle's old cabin, I didn't really know what to expect. He said his uncle had died the year before, and nobody had been out to the property since. His family wanted the place cleared out before winter. He mentioned some money and a few beers. I had the weekend off, so I figured sure. Why not? We left early Friday morning. It was October 11th, cloudy and cold, but not raining. The drive took about an hour and a half from Avery, then another 20 minutes through winding dirt roads that didn't look like anyone had driven down them in years. The woods pressed in close on both sides, trees leaning at weird angles, moss covering everything. There weren't any other cars or houses once we got off the main road. Just woods and more woods. Mark drove his old Silverado. The truck rattled like hell. He smoked the whole way and barely talked, just kept the window cracked and the music low. When I asked how bad the cabin was, he said, "Pretty rough. My uncle didn't throw anything away. Guy was a little off, to be honest." We got there around 9 in the morning. The cabin sat in a small clearing, surrounded by overgrown weeds and trees that were way too close to the structure. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Moss on the roof. One of the shutters hanging loose. The front porch was warped. The railing cracked in the middle like something heavy had leaned against it. Inside, the place smelled stale, like wet wood and something else underneath it. Not exactly rotten, just musty in a weird way. I don't know how to describe it. The living room was full of boxes and piles of junk. Old hunting gear, stacks of newspapers, empty coffee cans, tools scattered everywhere. You couldn't walk in a straight line without stepping over something. We spent most of Friday just hauling stuff out to a burn pile out back. Anything that looked moldy or useless went straight into it. Mark said we'd take useful tools and sell them or donate them later, but not much looked worth saving. He found a few of his uncle's rifles and locked them in the truck bed. Said we'd take them back into town. By sunset, the air had gotten colder. The light faded fast out there. We set up sleeping bags in the back bedroom, which had the least amount of junk in it. No electricity, so we used lanterns and flashlights. We cooked canned chili over a small propane burner Mark brought. No signal on either of our phones. I wasn't really creeped out yet, just tired and cold. It was around 10 at night when I first noticed something weird. I was brushing my teeth in the kitchen sink, and I felt this cold draft coming from the pantry. I figured maybe the door or a window was open in there, but when I looked, everything was shut. I moved a few boxes and found a trapdoor under a torn linoleum mat. It was smaller than I expected. Not even a full-size door. Just a square cut into the floor with a metal ring to pull it open. "Hey Mark," I called out. "Was this always here?" He walked over and stared at it for a second, like he didn't remember it being there either. Then he shrugged. "Storage cellar, I guess. My uncle had a weird obsession with stocking up for stuff. He was always talking about blackouts or government raids or whatever." We pulled it open. The hinges groaned. A narrow wooden ladder led down into a low room, maybe 7 feet across. The beam from my flashlight flickered a little as I pointed it down. Dirt walls, a few rusted shelves, more boxes, cans, nothing immediately scary. But there was a weird sound coming from one of the walls, a kind of clicking, very faint, like someone tapping fingernails on metal. Mark didn't hear it at first. He was messing with his flashlight batteries, cursing under his breath. I stepped down the ladder to get a closer look, but as soon as my boots hit the dirt floor, I smelled this strong, burnt smell, like singed hair or something fried on a burner for too long. That's when my flashlight cut out. I called up to Mark and he tossed me a lantern, but it only lasted maybe a minute before it started flickering too. I got this weird feeling in my chest, like the air was thicker down there, or just wrong somehow. I didn't want to keep looking. I climbed back up without saying much. Back upstairs, we chalked it up to old wiring or batteries going bad. We both knew that didn't make sense though. The lantern was brand new. So were the flashlight batteries. We turned in around midnight. The air inside the cabin had gotten noticeably colder. I had to keep my hoodie on inside my sleeping bag. I remember hearing the wind pick up outside. Tree branches tapping against the walls and roof. Pretty normal stuff out in the woods, but it still put me on edge. I woke up once in the night and saw Mark sitting upright in his sleeping bag, just staring at the door. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just slowly laid back down like he hadn't heard me. In the morning, he acted like nothing happened, just started making instant coffee and talking about finishing the burn pile. I asked him if he heard anything weird overnight and he said no, that he slept like a rock. That second day, things started to feel heavier. I know that sounds vague, but the whole cabin just felt wrong. The air felt thicker. I kept thinking I heard someone walking on the porch, but every time I checked, it was empty. Around noon, I found scratches on my leg, 3 thin red lines going down the side of my calf. I was wearing jeans the whole time, so I didn't know how they got there. I showed Mark, and he just looked at them and said, "Weird," then went back to sorting through a box of ammo. Later, we went through his uncle's closet and found a trail cam in one of the boxes. Mark decided to set it up just for fun. He attached it to a tree about 20 feet from the cabin, pointed toward the clearing, said we'd check it the next day. That night, the knocking started. 3 sharp knocks on the front door around 2:30 in the morning. We both sat up at the same time. I looked at him and whispered, "Did you hear that?" He nodded, didn't move for a while. The knocks came again, slower this time, more spaced out. We got up and went to the door. Mark opened it. I held the flashlight over his shoulder. There was no one there. just the dark clearing and the sound of trees creaking in the wind. But in the frost on the porch boards there were footprints, bare feet, human-sized. They stopped about 3 feet from the door and vanished. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, just sat there with the flashlight between us, waiting for the sun to come up. The next morning, Mark was different, quiet, withdrawn. He kept rubbing his arms like he was cold even though the sun was out. I checked the trail cam. It had one image on it, taken just after midnight. It was blurry, real blurry. But you could make out Mark standing near the edge of the porch, looking toward the woods, and something else, tall, leaning partway out from behind a tree. You couldn't see its face, just the shape of it. Wrong proportions, long arms, like it was crouching but also standing. Mark deleted the photo without saying anything. We didn't talk for the rest of the day. The third day felt like it stretched forever. Time seemed slower out there. It was like everything just got heavier. Mark barely spoke. He spent most of the morning pacing back and forth across the clearing in front of the cabin. He kept rubbing his hands together and glancing towards the woods like he was expecting someone to show up. I asked if he was all right, and he just nodded once, like he didn't really hear me. The plan was to finish sorting the last of the boxes and leave in the morning, but by midday I started feeling like we needed to get out sooner. There was no clear reason. Nothing jumped out as urgent. I just had this feeling deep in my gut that staying one more night was a bad idea. It got worse after I went back into the kitchen to grab a water bottle. The trapdoor to the cellar was open again. I swear we had closed it. Mark even laid a folded blanket over it the night before, just to keep the draft from coming up. But when I walked in, the blanket was off to the side and the door was wide open. The ladder still led down into that dark space and the smell hit me immediately. Not as strong as before, but still there. That burnt, chemical kind of stink. Like something synthetic was cooking and melting at the same time. I called out to Mark. No answer. I called again, louder, and I heard him behind me. When I turned around, he was standing in the hallway staring at the open trapdoor. He looked even worse than earlier. Pale, dark circles under his eyes, lips dry and cracked. "You opened it?" I asked. He didn't move. He just said, "It was already open." I went down. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to see what changed. Something about it being open made my skin crawl, like the place itself was calling out. I figured if we were leaving soon, I needed to know what we were leaving behind. The cellar felt colder this time. The air was damp and still. My boots made soft crunching sounds on the dirt floor. I swept the flashlight slowly around, half expecting to see someone crouched in the corner. But it was empty, at least at first. Then I saw the wall again, the one where I had heard that soft clicking the first night. Something was different now. The dirt around it looked disturbed, like it had been pushed from the other side. Small mounds, almost like something had been tunneling. A few boards and stones were knocked loose. The space felt tighter, like the room had shifted subtly. I took one step closer, and my ears popped. That sharp change in pressure when you're in an elevator, but sudden. I got dizzy and had to put my hand against the wall to steady myself. That was when I noticed something strange. The wall was breathing. It looked like the dirt was moving in and out, ever so slightly, slow and shallow, like something was behind it, pressing gently at regular intervals. I blinked hard, thought maybe it was just my vision playing tricks. But it kept happening. I turned to go back up, but I heard a noise from behind me. Soft, wet, a shifting sound like something sliding across the dirt just out of sight. I didn't look back. I climbed the ladder and shut the trapdoor without saying a word. Mark was waiting at the table. He looked at me, and I could tell he already knew something happened. I asked him one more time if he remembered his uncle talking about anything strange at the cabin. He nodded slowly. He said there was something that lived in the wall, Mark said. Said it started years ago, just scratching at night at first, then voices, then copies. That last word stopped me. Copies? Mark didn't answer. He got up and walked outside. He didn't come back in for a long time. I tried packing some things while I waited. Got our bags ready, cleaned up a bit. My head still felt off, like I was moving underwater. I couldn't focus. I kept forgetting where I was putting things. At one point, I found the same flashlight in 3 different spots, and I couldn't figure out how. It was just after dark when I realized Mark hadn't come back inside. I called for him, walked to the edge of the clearing. I shined the flashlight into the trees and yelled again. No answer. I circled the cabin once, thinking maybe he had just gone to the truck. But the truck was empty, and the trail cam light was off. The whole clearing was quiet, completely still. I walked about 20 feet into the woods. I didn't want to go any further. The darkness out there felt thick, like it wanted to pull you in and keep you. I stood there and listened. Then I heard him. Or at least I thought I did. Eric. It came from further in, too far to see. The voice sounded like Mark's, kind of, but flat, like someone saying his name from memory instead of actually calling for him. Then it came again, quieter, closer this time. Eric. Something about it felt wrong. The pitch was slightly off and the space between the syllables was too even. I turned around and ran back to the cabin. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. I closed the trapdoor again and shoved the heaviest box I could find on top of it. I sat with my back against the wall, flashlight in my lap, trying to stay awake. At some point I must have dozed off. I remember dreaming I was still in the woods, but everything was reversed. The trees were white, the sky was black, and there was no sound at all. I woke up gasping. My mouth was dry, and my arms were freezing. Then I realized I was outside, in the woods, alone. No flashlight, no shoes, just my jeans, a hoodie, and socks soaked through with cold mud. The sky was starting to lighten up, maybe 5 or 6 in the morning. I had no idea how I got there. My hands were scraped, my knees were bleeding. I looked around and saw nothing familiar, just trees. It took hours to find a road. Eventually, I flagged down a trucker who took me to a gas station about 20 miles outside of Avery. I couldn't explain what happened. I just said I got lost camping. The guy looked at me sideways and gave me a blanket. They never found Mark. The cabin was still there when the police went out. Our stuff was still inside. So was the trapdoor. They said it led to a shallow root cellar with no tunnel. No alternate exit, nothing that could explain what I described. My footprints were all over the place, but there was no sign of Mark after that second night. They found the trail cam too. There were only 3 photos saved. One was of the empty clearing. One was Mark standing next to the cabin door. The last one, well, I never got to see it. The cops wouldn't show me, just said it was corrupted and strange looking. One of them told me off the record that it looked like a person, but stretched or twisted, standing right where the cellar entrance would be. I went back home. Tried to get on with things, but things haven't felt right since. Sometimes I wake up in places I don't remember walking to. Just small things, like I'll open my eyes and I'll be standing in the kitchen or sitting on the porch with no memory of how I got there. I keep my doors locked at all times now. I haven't talked to Mark's family. I don't know what I'd even say.